show Legacy of former Prime Minister PV Narsimha Rao. And we have with me a very special guest. We have Sanjaya Baru ji, who's a former media advisor to the Prime Minister of India from 2004 to 2008. He also served as a senior journalist. He's a senior journalist who served as the chief editor of Business Standard and Financial Express, and he was edit page editor of Times of India, and he was also editor of Economic Times. A very warm welcome to you, Sanjay Baruji, to our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sanjay Baruji, you have also authored a book, 1991, How PV Narasimha Rao Made History. Why do you say that 1991 was a very significant year in India's history?
Indeed. In fact, why don't you show the cover of that book? I realize you have a copy
Sure,
of the
this is
book.
the cover of the book.
That's the cover of the book.
This is the cover of the book.
I'm particularly proud of that book because I wrote it in a very short period of time, but I think it tells a story. I've written it as a story. The chapters are January to December 1991. And the title of the book is 1991 because in the judgment of not just myself, but many commentators, many analysts of contemporary Indian history, 1991 was the most important year after 1947 for a variety of reasons. From 1947 to the 1980s, till the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, we had a long period, 30-40 years of the country being governed essentially by one family, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi. And that period has been called the Nehruvian era. Many believe that 1991 was the turning point, the beginning of the post-Nehruvian era. So politically, 1991 was, of course, a significant turning point. But the second and what is widely recognized as a turning point is for the Indian economy. We had a regime of what was called the license permit control Raj, an economic policy defined by the 1956 Industrial Policy Resolution that Jawaharlal Nehru introduced. And that license permit control Raj ended in July 1991, precisely 30 years ago, when the Prime Minister Narsimha Rao removed what was called a bonfire of controls. He removed all these controls and liberated Indian private enterprise. But there are other factors that happened in 1991 which make it a historic year. December 1991 was when the Cold War came to an end with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the whole year of 1991 we saw the transition towards a post-Cold War world. And finally, of course, because of the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, the Congress party went through a major fundamental transformation. For the first time, you had organizational elections in the Congress party under a non-Gandhi, non-Nehru Gandhi family member with the April 92 session of the All India Congress Committee. So the politics, the foreign policy, the global context, the economic context, all of this changed in 91 and began what we call, in the global context, we say it's a post-Cold War era that began in 91. In the Indian context, we say it's the post-liberalization era of globalization that began in 1991. It is also the post-Nehruvian era in terms of the politics of this country.
Okay. Sanjay Baruji, you also mentioned in this book that we moved away from bad economics to good economics, and we moved away from bad politics to good politics. Why did you say so?
Well, I defined bad politics in the sense that, I think Narsimha Rao himself put it very well in his book, The Insider. He wrote a fictionalized semi-autobiography, which was actually released after his prime ministership by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And in that book, he makes this very interesting statement that the Congress party evolved from being a party to becoming a proprietorship. And that was how the Congress party was taken over by one family. Till the election of Indira Gandhi, in fact, till the emergency, the Congress party functioned like a political party. But once Indira Gandhi brought her son Sanjay first, and then finally Rajiv Gandhi, and there was a open dynastic transition, the party became a family entity. And now we are seeing right now in the country how that is being played out once again, with so many loyal congressmen saying that Rahul Gandhi should take over the Congress party, though under his leadership the party lost the elections in 2014 and again in 2019. But there is one political party that does not punish its leaders for their electoral defeats. I say it's a transition from bad politics to good politics, because there was the glimmer of hope in 91 that the Congress party would once again function like a normal political party, by which you mean that leadership would change from time to time. New generations of politicians would come into the party, go up the ladder of leadership, and it's no longer simply that you're son of somebody or daughter of somebody that entitles you to leadership of the party, but that your hard work is recognized, political work is recognized, and political leadership then sees transition from generation to generation. So that's the context in which I said that good politics had taken over from bad politics.
Okay. So, very significant year it was. But you also called PV Narasimha Rao as the first accidental prime minister. Why so?
Well, I mean, that is quite obvious because he was not expecting to become prime minister. He was actually winding up his house in Delhi. He was packing his bags in Delhi. There was a story written by his secretary, PVRK Prasad, that he had acted to become a pujari in a temple. There was also this fact that he had set up a think tank in Hyderabad in the name of his guru, Swami Ramanand Tirth, and was planning to become the head of that think tank. So here was someone who was a foreign minister of India, defense minister of India, home minister of India, human development resources minister of India, held all the major portfolios at the center, but was going back home to Hyderabad to run a think tank, become a temple priest, and suddenly the party decided to turn to him and make him the lead president of the party and become the prime minister. So it was a product of an accident. The assassination of Rajiv Gandhi was an accident.
So, what was implemented in 1991? They say that the thoughts were germinating in his mind from right from 70s. So, but the Manmohan Singh was credited with economic reforms, though it was his brainchild.
Well, you see, I'll tell you, frankly, the ideas that find fruition in 1991, economic policy ideas, have been around for at least a decade before that. In 1981, Indira Gandhi, as Prime Minister, went to the International Monetary Fund for the first time after many, many years, to borrow money, and that began the process of dismantling the license permit control Raj. There was some liberalization of economic policy. So, in a sense, 81, the transition began. And several committees were set up, the Abid Hussain Committee, Narsimham Committee, Dagli Committee, various committees were set up that came up with ideas for a transition in India's economic policy. So if you look at the decade between 81 to 91, that was the decade of policy the idea was there, and he pushed it during his prime ministership. There were many other ideas that he is credited with. For example, the idea of Navodaya Vidyalayas. When he was Minister for Human Resources Development, it was his idea. So the extension of reservation for educationally and socially backward categories of people. Many of these reforms, apart from the economic reforms of 91, were initiatives that Narsimha Rao took.
So, what was the difference between, if we look at the prime ministers, Manmohan Singh and PV Narsimha Rao? PV Narsimha Rao said, we hear that he said that I cannot demean the office of Prime Minister of India. I cannot take in from Penjat, or I cannot allow somebody to come and tell me what Sonia Gandhi wants to say. I cannot go with a notebook and take dictation. So, what was the difference between, because Manmohan Singh was considered as a shadow prime minister, whereas Narsimha Rao had guts and he took decisions, bold decisions.
Well, there are two differences. First of all, Narsimha Rao was more of a politician than Dr. Manmohan Singh. Dr. Manmohan Singh was also a politician, and I can certainly say that he thought like a politician, he acted like a politician. But Narsimha Rao was a lifelong politician. Manmohan Singh became a politician only during his tenure as finance minister and leader of the opposition, the Rajya Sabha. But both were politicians, but neither expected to become prime minister, and both became prime minister. So in that sense, they did not seek the job, but the job came their way. But you asked me what is the similarity or the difference between the two styles. I have to quote my father here. My father knew both Prime Minister Narsimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh very, very well for a long time. In fact, he was the returning officer as the collector of Karimnagar district when Narsimha Rao contested for the first time to become an MLA in 1957. So my father knew him from 1957, and he knew Manmohan Singh from around 1974 or 75, and Manmohan Singh was in the Ministry of Finance. And he said to me once, looking at the style of both the prime ministers, he said, look, both Narsimha Rao and Manmohan Singh were lifelong number twos. They had functioned as number two. They took instructions from the number one all through their life. Even when Narsimha Rao was chief minister, he was taking instructions from Indira Gandhi, who was then prime minister. But when Narsimha Rao became the prime minister, he finally made the transition from behaving and being a number two to becoming a number one. And he said that's the transition that Manmohan Singh did not fully make, that he remained very much in the way he functioned as a number two, with Sonia Gandhi being the number one. And that is what I've tried to capture in my book. But I think that was the fundamental difference, that once Narsimha Rao became prime minister, till then he was very much a number two. He always loyal to the leader. But once he became prime minister, he recognized that in India, the prime minister is number one. He is head of the country. He's not just head of the government. He's a sovereign representative of the country and functioned as such, and therefore was not willing to, always turn up at 10 Janpath and take instructions from Sonia Gandhi. While Manmohan Singh, did not make that transition fully, though even he, on many occasions, stood his ground, and I have said that, particularly in pursuing his foreign policy. But he did not make that full transition of asserting the authority of the Prime Minister's office. So I think that was the fundamental difference.
Okay, that was a fundamental difference. I would like to understand from you, Sanjaya Baru, why Sonia Gandhi was angry with him, why party literally disowned him and did not give him due respect which he should have been given.
I think there were two very different reasons. One, of course, was the fact that by the time Rajiv Gandhi died in 91, the Congress had already become essentially the property of the Nehru Gandhi family. Many people don't remember this, but the Congress party took a plot of land on Raisina Road in New Delhi to build what was to be called the Jawaharlal Nehru Bhavan as the headquarters of the Indian National Congress. There used to be a foundation stone which actually said this, that this is the headquarters of the Indian National Congress. But somewhere in the early 90s, that was removed. The building was made the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and taken over by a private trust headed by Sonia Gandhi. It, in a sense, captured that takeover of the party by the family. All the trusts were essentially family-run trusts, Nehru Memorial Trust, Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, etc. So the fact that Narsimha Rao was not willing to accept this, or rather, not just Narsimha Rao, but many in the Congress party who genuinely wanted, they had nothing against Sonia Gandhi. They had nothing against Rajiv Gandhi or Indira Gandhi. In fact, they were all very loyal to Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi. But they wanted the Congress party to become a normal political party. Just like Bharatiya Janata Party or the Communist Party of India, parties which are not run by one family, which is what most of our regional parties are. They're all run by Karunanidhi's family, Chandrasekhar Rao's family, Jagan Reddy's family, Mulayam Singh Yadav's family. It's all family-run political parties, regional parties. But the national parties were not family-run. So I think, in a sense, there was an attempt to give the Congress party an independent status, independent of the family, which obviously many people around the family, particularly the loyalists, what are called coterie, around the family, did not like, and certainly they were the ones who badmouthed Narsimha Rao. That is one reason. The second reason is that after the collapse of Babri, after the destruction of Babri Masjid, and the fact that the government of India did not intervene in time, which incidentally was the decision of the entire Union Cabinet. The Union Cabinet met the day before the destruction of the Babri Masjid and took the view that there's an elected state government in Uttar Pradesh, and it was a responsibility of the elected state government to maintain law and order, and they decided that the central government would not interfere. So it was a collective cabinet decision, and the cabinet included people like Arjun Singh and all the ministers. But once that happened, and the Muslim community in large parts of the country became very angry with the Congress because they did not impose president's rule and take over state government, the Congress party had to find some scapegoat. And Narsimha Rao was made the scapegoat. They said, oh, this was not the party's decision, it was Narsimha Rao's decision, and he is responsible for this, and made one person responsible rather than the entire party, the entire Union Cabinet, and hung him on that. And so I think these two factors played a role in the distancing between the party and the Prime Minister.
Okay. PV Narasimha Rao was also credited with bringing about many industrial policy changes. For example, License Raj and many other reforms. Could you enlighten us on those aspects that led to the way for the economic reforms or the industrial reforms which we have seen in the past?
Yeah, when we talk of 1991 and of a change in the policy structure in the country, often people don't realize what exactly happened. They just think, okay, liberalization happened. But no, there were three very different elements to the policies of the two budgets of July 1991 and February 1992. If you combine these two budgets, there were three significant changes. First and foremost, because of the context in which the reform was undertaken, the first and most important change was the fiscal reforms. The decision to reduce the fiscal deficit drastically, because that was a condition for getting the loan from the International Monetary Fund. And therefore, as Finance Minister Manmohan Singh reduced the fiscal deficit sharply between 91, 92 and 93. But the real reform was not that. There were two other elements of the policy package which, in my judgment, were the real reforms. The most important was the end of the license permit Raj. And people don't remember that the person who was the Minister for Industries in July 1991, when this reform was undertaken, was none other than Prime Minister Narsimha Rao. Because as Prime Minister, he kept the industries portfolio. And as Industries Minister, he took the decision to end all this licensing system, the control system, and usher in the delicensing and decontrol of industry. And don't forget that Narsimha Rao was also the only prime minister in the last 73 years after independence to give a business leader a Bharat Ratna. In January 92, JRD Tata was named as Bharat Ratna, and I think it was a recognition of the contribution of Indian business to India's development that Narsimha Rao chose JRD Tata for the Bharat Ratna. No other businessman till now has ever been given a Bharat Ratna. So that whole change of industrial policy, the freeing of private enterprise, allowing businessmen to take decisions about capacity utilization, about total capacity, about location of industry, all of that was done by Narsimha Rao as Industries Minister. The second or third element of policy change, which was also significant, was the reduction in tariffs, what was called trade liberalization, which was undertaken by the Commerce Minister at that time, P. Chidambaram. And I think my memory serves me right, his Commerce Secretary was Monte Ahluwalia. I think they undertook major trade reform in July 91. So industrial reform, trade reform, fiscal reform, these are the three elements of the policy package put in place during those 6 months.
So would you say that the foundation was laid during the time of PV Narsimha Rao, on which we are seeing the dream of $5 trillion economy for India?
Well, certainly, of course, 5 trillion is at the moment a bit of a dream, given the direction in which the economy is going. But the fact is that the policies which at that time in 1991 were criticized both by the left parties and by the BJP, which attacked Narsimha Rao and Manmohan Singh in the parliament in 1991-92. Both of them were in office after that. The CPM was supporting the governments of Deve Gowda and I.K. Gujral, and the BJP, of course, led the Atalji's government, the BJP government. So from 95 or 96 to 2004, you had governments in New Delhi which were either had the BJP in them or had left parties supporting them. They did not reverse any of these policies. Whatever happened in 91-92 continued right through that period. In fact, right till about 3-4 years back, it is only for the first time under Narendra Modi that we see a reversal of the tariff policies. There has been an increase in tariffs across several commodities. So, in a sense, on trade front, we see some reversal. But on the industrial policy front, even Prime Minister Modi has moved further down the road, and on a fiscal front also, he has tried to keep within the framework of the fiscal responsibility bill.
Okay. Would you say that he also ensured political participation of women because he was the Prime Minister when 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment took place, which ensured 33% reservation for women in local bodies and in Panchayat Raj. But if you look at women reservation bill, wherein we are talking about reservation for women in Parliament, it's still not able to see daylight, or Lok Sabha mein pahunch nahi pata hai.
You're right. Though of course I'm not familiar with the background of that particular bill, because the ideas originated during Rajiv Gandhi's time, except Rajiv Gandhi could not actually implement those ideas, and the implementation happened during Narsimha Rao's time. So to what extent he was responsible for the original idea, I'm not aware. But certainly he should be given the credit, because after all it was during his prime ministership that the bill was taken to Parliament and voted in Parliament. And you're absolutely right that beyond this reservation at the Panchayat level, no political party has been able to extend this to state assemblies and the Parliament.
जी, अगर टफ बिल पास कराने होते हैं तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर को वो पॉलिटिकल बिल भी चाहिए होती है. वो हमने नरसिम्हा राव के टाइम पर देखी. लेकिन एक पार्टी जैसे हम बीजेपी की बात करें, वो सत्ता में आई 2014 में भी, लेकिन इसके वादे के साथ कि हम वुमेन रिजर्वेशन बिल पास कराएंगे, लेकिन वो 5 साल बीत गए, कुछ नहीं हुआ. तो कहीं ना कहीं पॉलिटिकल विल की जरूरत होती है टफ डिसीजंस लेने के लिए, चाहे वो इकोनॉमिक डिसीजन हो, चाहे इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी डिसीजंस हो, चाहे पॉलिटिकल पार्टिसिपेशन की बात हो.
बिल्कुल, पॉलिटिकल विल जब आप कहते हैं तो मेरे ख्याल में जो नरसिम्हा राव जी का जो पॉलिटिकल विल था इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म पे, फॉरेन पॉलिसी चेंजेस पे। हम अब तक फॉरेन पॉलिसी के बारे में बात नहीं कर चुके हैं, शायद करेंगे बाद में, मगर इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी पे, फॉरेन पॉलिसी पे, पार्टी के इलेक्शंस, एआईसीसी सेशन जब हुई थी 1992 में, अप्रैल 92 तिरुपति में, फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन 20 इयर्स, 20 साल के बाद कांग्रेस पार्टी के ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल इलेक्शंस हुए थे। तो पार्टी के अंदर जो डेमोक्रेटिक इनिशिएटिव्स उन्होंने लिया, पार्लियामेंट में इनिशिएटिव्स जो लिया, सरकार में जो इनिशिएटिव्स लिया, इसके लिए पॉलिटिकल विल चाहिए। अगर प्राइम मिनिस्टर के पास पॉलिटिकल विल होगा तो काफ़ी प्राइम मिनिस्टर कर सकते हैं। हमारे सिस्टम में प्राइम मिनिस्टर का जो अधिकार है, हमारे पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम में काफ़ी अधिकार है, और अगर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म नहीं कर पाती तो ये पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप का रिफ्लेक्शन।
जी, फॉरेन पॉलिसी की बात आपने की। फॉरेन पॉलिसी पर एक्सपर्टीज मानी जाती थी पीवी नरसिम्हा राव की। उन्होंने कई बड़े डिसीजन लिए जिसने भारत की दिशा और आगे की जो हमारा डायरेक्शन है वो तय किया।
हाँ बिल्कुल, मैं पहले कह रहा था कि ये जो पोस्ट नेहरूवियन और पोस्ट नेहरूवियन आर्थिक व्यवस्था जो हम कहते हैं, तो नेहरूवियन आर्थिक व्यवस्था के आर्किटेक्ट्स थे पंडित जी और इंदिरा जी, मगर पोस्ट नेहरूवियन इकोनॉमिक आर्किटेक्चर के आर्किटेक्ट थे नरसिम्हा राव। और इसी तरह नेहरूवियन फॉरेन पॉलिसी जो होती है कि नॉन अलाइनमेंट, जो कोल्ड वॉर में फॉर्मुलेट किया गया, जब भारत काफ़ी लो लेवल डेवलपिंग इकोनॉमी था, उसका ज़्यादा ताकत नहीं था अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर, और भारत ने ये तय किया कि हम नॉन अलाइन रहेंगे सोवियत यूनियन और यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के बीच में। 62 वॉर में हम, चाइना जब हमारे देश के अंदर आई थी, हम सरहद पे टिक न पाए। तो उस नेहरूवियन लेगेसी को कंपेयर करेंगे और देखेंगे कि पोस्ट कोल्ड वॉर इरा में जैसा चेंज हुआ है, तो हम कह सकते हैं कि पोस्ट कोल्ड वॉर foreign policy is essentially post Nehruvian foreign policy was Narsimha Rao's foreign policy. What do I mean by that? First of all, as I said, in December 91, the Soviet Union collapsed. So the Cold War ended formally there. The Eastern European blocs, East Germany and Poland and Hungary, all of them underwent a revolution. तो पोस्ट कोल्ड वॉर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में नरसिम्हा राव रीडायरेक्टेड इंडियन पॉलिसी कि हम अब यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के साथ एक नई लेवल पे विल बिल्ड अ न्यू रिलेशनशिप। और वो न्यू रिलेशनशिप जो आज हम देखते हैं, जब चीन फिर आ गई है सरहद पे, जब when we are finding it difficult to deal with Chinese assertiveness, we are once again moving closer to the United States. The origin of this policy starts in 1992 with Narsimha Rao's foreign policy initiatives. He took 3 or 4 significant foreign policy initiatives. The second one was what we call the Look East policy, turning India's attention to East Asia, building relations with South Korea. He was the first Indian Prime Minister to go to South Korea, building relationship with Japan, building relationship with Singapore. Even today, the Singaporeans refer to Narsimha Rao's visit as the time when India fever, जो कहते हैं, in Singapore they say, an India fever took charge of Singapore, because the Singaporeans suddenly started looking at India. And Lee Kuan Yew, as you know, was not a particularly friendly towards India. He did not like the way India was dealing with Asian countries. But he became a great admirer of Narsimha Rao. The third thing he did was our policy towards West Asia. By recognizing Israel, by starting a relationship with Israel, which finally the diplomatic thing was taken to a new level by Prime Minister Modi, but the initiative first was taken by Narsimha Rao. But he did that without weakening up our relations with the Arab countries, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Oman. So he had a comprehensive approach to Gulf, what you can now call Look West policy. He had a comprehensive approach to East Asia and Southeast Asia, the Look East policy, and of course he redefined our relations with the United States and the big powers in the context of the end of the Cold War. And these policy changes have continued, have been sustained right through. We have had again, 5-6 prime ministers since then, but there has been no fundamental change in the direction of Indian foreign policy.
He redefined our relationship with many countries, including US, Gulf countries, or Southeast Asia, or South Asian countries, and many other. Um, During his last days, PV Narsimha Rao saw very tough days. They say that there was an organized effort to implicate him in case after case, and he had to sell his house. He had to sell his house to pay to the advocates.
Yeah, I mean, they hounded him out. Basically, if he had remained loyal to the family, this hounding out would not have happened because there's so many other congressmen who could have been put in jail by now. Many of them are, living quite happy lives outside jail. But Narsimha Rao was taken to courts because he was not willing to, to kowtow, as the Chinese say, Sonia Gandhi. So that was a period which was very tragic period for him. And finally, it ended with he's not even being allowed to be cremated in Delhi. Where there's no national memorial for him in Delhi. I keep telling people it's an irony that people who are ministers of state in the Narsimha Rao government have streets named after them in Delhi. There's a Rajesh Pilot Marg, and there's a Madhav Sindhya Marg, there's a Arjun Singh Marg. All these fellows have margs named after them in Delhi, but there's no Narsimha Rao Marg. There's no Narsimha Rao Bhavan. So Delhi has basically rejected him, thrown him out because he decided he would stand up to the what Narendra Modi calls Lutyens mafia, Lutyens Delhi, the Khan Market gang as he calls them.
Okay. Yes, is he? I think he, as we discuss among journalists also, that he was a person who was not after publicity, or probably Lutyens Delhi didn't give him the due credit.
Yes, I mean, the funny thing, many of the Delhi kind of media also, when they think of Narsimha Rao, say, "Oh my God, he knew Spanish, he knew French, he knew, several languages," as if that is the kind of ultimate achievement in life that you know European languages. But I've heard it so often said by so many people in Lutyens Delhi that they think of Narsimha Rao as some great intellectual because he could speak foreign languages. But the fact is that he was highly grounded, culturally grounded in this country. He was totally rooted in the life of Telangana. So here was a political leader who attained the heights of power in the country, but had his feet firmly on the ground, on the soil of this country.
His feet were firm on the ground and soil of the country. But you have mentioned in your book several interesting incidents where you ask student about his achievements or about him or about economic reforms. Even people in Hyderabad are not aware much about what he has done for our country.
That's right. That's what my book begins with that, and it's a fact that between the Congress Party and the Delhi media and intellectual class, we are forced to forget the legacy of Narsimha Rao till Vinay Sitapati wrote that excellent autobiography, The Half Lion. And Jairam Ramesh has written a good book called Back from the Brink. I wrote my 1991. So when these 3 or 4 books came out, in 2016, I think the silver jubilee of 1991. That's the first time that people started taking a second look, or actually sometimes often the first look at Narsimha Rao's legacy. So I would credit Vinay Sitapati. I would give credit to Jairam. I would also claim credit for myself that we all forced people to look at Narsimha Rao's legacy. And then in the last 2-3 years, there has been much more recognition, I think, thanks to the fact that the BJP has made it an issue. But even the BJP till today has not yet given him the Bharat Ratna. I mean, we have given Bharat Ratnas to all kinds of people, M.G. Ramachandran, V.V. Giri, Nanaji Deshmukh. I mean, compared to Narsimha Rao, their contribution was nothing for the country. But I think finally the Telangana Rashtra Samiti in Telangana has decided to make this an issue, and they've recently launched a campaign for a Bharat Ratna. So I think finally, after all these years, thanks to the fact that this is a centenary year, there's much greater national attention on his contribution.
Okay, yeah, it's a centenary year, and good that at least Telangana is recognizing it and they're celebrating it as his centenary year. But P.V. Narasimha Rao was a person who was also praised by his successors. Atal Bihari Vajpayee praised him and called him the real father for India's nuclear program.
That's right. I mean, he had a very good personal equation with both with his predecessor Chandrasekhar and his successor Atalji, and indeed Deve Gowda, etc. He was a traditional congressman. Actually, the thing about traditional congressmen, and I grew up in Andhra Pradesh, with lots of these traditional congressmen around me because my father knew many of them, Vengal Rao, Brahmananda Reddy, Channa Reddy, all of the traditional congressmen was an inclusive person. They made friends with the left, they made friends with the right, they had friends across the political spectrum. That was the strength of the Congress party. I think Rajni Kothari, the political scientist, called it the Congress system, which is that you act like an umbrella. Whoever is willing to come and stand under your umbrella gets your protection. So the whole politics culture of the Congress party was an inclusive culture. Nobody was a permanent enemy. Everybody was a potential friend. And Narsimha Rao came from that culture, came from that milieu. He had excellent relations with Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He actually sent an official Indian delegation to the United Nations Human Rights Conference led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And the deputy leader was Salman Khurshid. What better symbolism of Indian unity than to have Atalji and Salman Khurshid, leading an Indian delegation to the United Nations. So Narsimha Rao and Atalji himself was an inclusive personality. We now live in a politics of exclusion. White and black, friend and enemy. The country is getting divided. But one of the great legacies of people like Narsimha Rao and Atal Bihari Vajpayee was inclusive politics.
And even Manmohan Singh, he was mentor of Manmohan Singh, who stood like a rock behind Manmohan Singh while he was implementing those economic reforms. It was, as I say, that it was primarily the idea of PV Narsimha Rao and it was the backing of him which gave courage to the whole leadership to go ahead and implement those reforms.
That's right. Look, at the end of the day, any major policy at the national level has to be led by the Prime Minister. In fact, Narsimha Rao famously told somebody, and I have mentioned that in my book, that when he was asked, who is the author of liberalization, is it you or is it Dr. Manmohan Singh? He said, look, the finance minister's power is like a zero. His power depends on the number you place in front of him. Whether you put 1 or 9, the power is defined by what you put in front of him. And that person is the Prime Minister. In other words, it's the Prime Minister who defines the power of the Finance Minister. If the Prime Minister wants something done, the Finance Minister will do it. And therefore, when people attribute policy reform to whether it's Dr. Manmohan Singh in the past or later on, whether Yashwant Sinha or Arun Jaitley or Nirmala Sitharaman, whatever they've been able to do because of the support of the Prime Minister.
It's just because of the vision of the Prime Minister, a finance minister can have courage or can implement some major reforms. Before we conclude this show, Sanjaya Baruji, I would like to understand from you that how shall we remember former Prime Minister of India, PV Narsimha Rao, who was a visionary, who put forth India to the path of self-reliance and prosperity. How shall we remember him?
Well, I think we have to remember him by 1991, which is why the title of my book was 1991. We have to remember him for what he did in that 1 year. He saved the Congress party when it was in the midst of a huge, unprecedented crisis. Both the assassinations of Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi had deeply wounded the party. So in a sense, he was able to keep the party united, which is a great feat. Today you can see how the party is dividing itself under Rahul Gandhi's, Sonia's leadership. Jyotiraditya Scindia is leaving, Sachin Pilot is leaving, Jagan Mohan Reddy left earlier. But in that period of 91, when there was a party was in crisis, he kept it united. That was his political contribution. The Cold War ended, but he gave direction to India's foreign policy for the post-Cold War era. That was his foreign policy contribution. That again was 1991. And finally, of course, the economic liberalization. There was a deep crisis. India was on the verge of default. India had never defaulted, and if he had defaulted, that would have been a huge negative, development for the country. But he prevented default and was able to save the economic dignity of the country. So, three major fronts, three major initiatives. 1995. That's why I say in my book, 1991 defined Narsimha Rao. Narsimha Rao defined 1991.
1991 defined Narsimha Rao, and 1991 defined.
Narsimha,
Yes. So thank you so much, PV. Thank you so much for talking to us about PV Narsimha Rao, how he made history, how he defined 1991, and how 1991 defined him. Thank you so much, Sanjaya Baru ji, former media advisor to the Prime Minister of India during 2004 to 2008, and you were chief editor of Financial Express and Business Standard, and you served as the edit page editor of Times of India and editor of Economic Times. Thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you.